Well, hello there. Thank you for joining me for the latest edition of Telile 24/7. I'm your host, Adam Cooke. On this week's show, I've got a roundup of recent items from the Richmond Municipal Council table. Everything from snow plowing to sewer systems to a new park proposed for Arichat. But we're beginning this week with an extensive look at COVID-19 and Nova Scotia's recent efforts to get everything under control in terms of the disease. And we're also taking a special look at what's involved in getting a COVID-19 rapid test. How do I know how it works? Well, because I took one. And I'm going to take you to where I did take that test at one of two pop-up clinics that happened in the Strait area late in February. One of them took place at the St. Peter's Lions Hall, and the following day I was off to the Port Hawkesbury Civic Centre. Let's go there right now and see what COVID-19 rapid testing is really all about. Now, surprisingly, on this Saturday afternoon in February, here at the Port Hawkesbury Civic Centre's Bare Head Room, it's somewhat quiet. There's no lineup to get COVID testing done, although I'm told that earlier this morning there was a strong turnout here in Port Hawkesbury, and that there continued to be a turnout until the weather turned nasty a little later in the afternoon. But that's all right. It's 3:15 on Saturday afternoon, February the 20th, and I'm looking forward to getting my nose swabbed and getting the COVID-19 test that I think I should be having. So let's go inside. After I answered 4 screening questions from the hardworking volunteers at the entrance to the Civic Centre, I gave my contact information to these folks so that they can send a text out or give me a call with the results of my COVID test. The gentleman on the far right is Richard MacDonald. He's the head of Praxes Medical Services, which was given the contract to carry out these rapid testing COVID-19 clinics by the Department of Health. So how have things gone in St. Peter's and in Port Hawkesbury since Praxes Medical Services set up shop there in late February? According to Richard MacDonald, hundreds of people have turned out.
St. Peter's was fantastic. It was a beautiful day, so it was easy to get people to come out and get a test. The local community did a very good job of advertising the pop-up on their social media platforms for the various small community groups. We also had a really great volunteering turnout, so part of the model is to try and drum up local community members so we can train them up how to do all the various roles and have them assist with this part of the asymptomatic testing strategy the province is currently using. In terms of numbers, I think we had somewhere around 240 people come through the door, which is a really, really great turnout for a place the size of St. Peter's. Today in Port Hawkesbury, it's a bit of a gloomy day. It's snowing, so we were aware we might get less numbers coming through here. So I think we've just surpassed somewhere around 115 people, which is also a good number. And we have a lot of volunteers from the local area as well, half of them being my family, which is really sweet for me.
I was also curious about whether there was any specific reason that the communities of St. Peter's and Port Hawkesbury were chosen, and for that matter, why the Lions Hall and the Civic Centre.
Yeah, we do our site selection kind of based on the population of the general area. And for instance, St. Peter's, we do know it is basically the hub of the Richmond County. So for us to find a location that we're able to run the site in, we like to have a lot of space to be able to social distance people coming in here, have a lot of adequate ventilation, and just to make it a completely safer atmosphere for the volunteers that are working as well as the people coming in. Port Hawkesbury is a fairly good-sized town, so we like to go to all the towns in Nova Scotia that we can. And we just haven't made it here yet, but we're here now, and I'm sure we'll be back when we get the opportunity.
All right, time to get swabbed. Yes, this is actually happening, and yes, I am going to give you a warning as to when the actual swab goes up my nose. But here's Richard MacDonald again to help describe exactly what happens to me and what happens to you if you go get a rapid test for COVID-19.
For the pop-ups specifically, we don't even require you to have an ID to come in here. So we just want to get people that are out for their groceries that can take the time out of the day to step in and come get a test done. It's very quick. There's currently no line in Port Hawkesbury. In and out, the approximate time will be about 6 to 7 minutes. We generally don't even have a line other than the morning and sometimes a small lunch rush, but throughout the time of day that we're at a site, it's not uncommon for there to be no line at all. When somebody comes in here, they're greeted and asked those same screening questions I asked you, and then they'll travel into registration, where ideally they have a cell phone and we'll send the results via text. If they don't have a cell phone, we can call a landline, send an email, or even have them wait outside. Following that, they'll be waiting in line to have their swab done, which will take place within probably a minute or two after registration, where the swab will be explained to them, how it will be administered, and taken effectively by most likely one of our trained volunteers who was either trained that day or at a previous pop-up. Today I think we've trained 4 volunteers from the area, which is a good number to train. And then what we tell them is that they'll receive their text results within 1 to 2 hours via whatever method they use to sign up. We'll know the results sooner than that, but it can take longer to send out that notification. But if we do get a positive, we'll be able to contact that person within probably, let's say, 20 minutes. So it is a relatively quick turnaround time.
Okay, I promised I'd tell you when the swab was going in my nose. So I'll count it down right now. 3, 2, 1, and there we are. You know something? I have to confess something to you folks right now. I'm a little squeamish around needles. I've had them for most of my life, but it still really bothers me to get a needle. But it didn't bother me to be able to get this nose swab for COVID-19. Most of the time I didn't even know it was there. And I was looking up at the ceiling, so I didn't even see it go in. The volunteer gave me some warning, just like I gave you some warning. Once the swab is taken out, it's taken over to another volunteer who puts it through a process that helps to get a rapid read on whether it's a negative or positive test. So what happens if you do get a positive test? Here's Richard MacDonald to explain the process.
So we will call that individual. Ideally, they would have given us a phone number to contact them, and we'll actually have them come back into the site if they can. We'll swab them again, and we'll have that sample taken immediately to a local hospital or a PAC, where that sample will eventually make its way to a laboratory where they'll run a PCR test on that sample. What we're doing here is a rapid antigen test. The PCR test requires a big laboratory machine that takes a few hours to run, but it's a higher quality test, and it's a more definite look at the sample. So we'll test them again and have them isolate until we get the results back of that test, and whoever they live with as well.
According to MacDonald, part of the appeal of having rapid testing sites for COVID-19 is that the test doesn't take long to do and can even be done en route to another activity.
Coming to a pop-up beforehand is a great way of kind of just giving you that confidence that, yeah, I got tested tonight and I was okay, right? So public health is encouraging everyone to start looking at the idea of weekly or monthly testing, especially if you're a type of person that's in many social groups or working in an environment where it has a lot of traffic. And something like the pop-up is really, really easy to do. You just walk in, you don't have an ID, and you walk out relatively quickly after.
However, the flip side of being able to do a rapid COVID-19 test on the way to somewhere else, or as a precaution before getting together with other social groups, is that despite the casual nature of this testing process, it is a real test for the disease.
Being an asymptomatic testing site, we kind of catch people that fall through the cracks of they don't think they have COVID, they don't have any symptoms, they haven't traveled, but we have gotten positive cases over the past few months. So we are catching people that are falling through the cracks and kind of taking them out of the population and having them isolate before something has a chance to spread. So it is you can look at it as like a right thing to do or helping your community out. And as I said, public health is encouraging people to start engaging in weekly or monthly testing if they can.
And as I wrap up my conversation with Richard MacDonald of Praxes Medical Services, just about 15 minutes after getting my nose swabbed, he reminds me, and all of us, that we don't have to wait for a rapid COVID-19 clinic to come to our area to go get tested for the disease. As a matter of fact, he points to the nshealth.ca website as a key way to find COVID-19 testing spots near you.
If there's no pop-up near you per se, there are other avenues for you to get tested. You can go online to the Nova Scotia Health website and book yourself an asymptomatic test. That will be a PCR test, but there's locations across the province, or you can call 811 and they'll help you find a site near you to get a test done.
Well, there we are. I'm all done my COVID test, and you know something? It really wasn't that bad. It was a little difficult to have the swab stuck up my nose for about half a minute, but it wasn't very painful. I wasn't even really aware that it was there most of the time. I've had some people say that it feels a little bit like water rushing up your nose, but I have to tell you, I've had water go up my nose lots of times during my life. It was nothing like that in there. Let's move on from COVID-19 to snow. It comes around every winter, although this winter it came around a little later than we usually see it. But whenever it comes, you know that there's going to be disruption on roads of all sizes throughout Richmond County and all over the Strait of Canso. But how fast are you getting your road plowed? Well, that's a question that Richmond Municipal Councillors want to put to the new Department of Transportation and Active Transit. So we're going to take a look now at some concerns that were recently raised in terms of the plowing of by-roads in Richmond County and get some comments from different councillors and from Warden Amanda Mumbercat.
I just wanted to put this on the agenda specifically because of the major snowfall that we had, which I think, people were all struggling with. And I know I'd heard from several councillors on this and would like to hear your hear your thoughts at this time in terms of any potential support that council could try to provide for the community.
I applaud and commend all the snowplow operators out there. I mean, for me, when I'm in my home and I'm safe, my family and I can't see the house across the road from wind and snow. I don't know if I'd want to be behind the wheel of a snowplow for sure, right? So. Thank you to all of those guys for sure. I guess I had some concerns from my district for sure. I have an aging population in my district, and a lot of them live in by roads. So there was a lot of concerns that their by roads weren't cleared up in time. And after the storm was over, it took several days to get rid of some ice and some snow.
Always with plowing and the scheduling, the sooner the better, right? Especially if you're a person with mobility issues, with some health issues. There's a variety of reasons you would need to have, you would be more concerned than, as Councillor Sean Sampson had said earlier, he's sitting in his house and he can't see the neighbors, but he's not out, having to deal with the snow. But the bottom line is that I think this council just wants to make sure that our relationship with transportation and infrastructure renewal is a really strong one, because if we have good information from the provincial department, then we can better communicate that to our constituents. Also, if there are extenuating circumstances in our communities, then that strong relationship gives us the ability to communicate that back to transportation infrastructure renewal staff as well.
Part of the problem, according to District 1 Councillor Sean Sampson, is the amount of time it takes for roads to be plowed. According to the official website of Nova Scotia's Transportation Department, local paved roads, gravel roads, subdivisions, and most residential streets only get paved 24 hours after the snow stops. By comparison, it's only a 12-hour wait for secondary routes and other medium traffic roads, while 100 series highways, trunk highways, and other high-traffic roads are cleared by the 8-hour mark following a major snow event. According to Councillor Sampson, that's too much time for the smaller roads in his communities.
The last storm we had a couple of weeks ago, it snowed for 12 hours. So for someone in a by road, it says clearly the roads will be cleared 12 hours after the snow stops. So if the roads are bypassed, if a by road is bypassed, the first 12 hours of a storm, you got 12 hours of snow accumulation there that is in a by road. Before our plow goes down there, right? So we're looking at a very dangerous situation for people, that are of age, and some of them have already suffered strokes and heart attacks and kidney dialysis and stuff like that.
We're always going to be concerned about those less able and for a variety of reasons in our community, people who maybe don't have the capacity even for clearing the snow from their doors, right? Like these are the concerns you're dealing with when in communities like Richmond County, where we do have an aging population, and that's why as councillors you will have heard all of us in the past saying, please look out for your neighbor, please check in, and we want people to continue doing that. But when it comes to our roadways, like I said, we just need to make sure our finger is on the pulse of who's the most in need out there, make sure that people are safe. So.
I'm not talking about a 2 to 5 centimeter dusting of snow. This is not the problem here, but if there's a major snowstorm, that we plan appropriately and take care of everybody in the areas, right? So.
To address these concerns, Council has directed Richmond CAO Don Marchand to reach out to the new District Supervisor for the South Inverness Richmond office of the Transportation Department. According to District 5 Councillor Brent Sampson, there's already some interest from the department in having such a meeting with Richmond officials.
Yeah, it had been indicated to me a little while back from the local supervisor. He was looking to meet with us at some point, probably in April. Now, that would likely be more to do with some summer operations and that, but he had reached out and mentioned that to me, that he'd like to meet with all of us in the spring. And I'm sure it's something could probably come up at that point. And maybe, if not, maybe we could meet with him again in the fall if that was possible. And I know it's a concern. I have a lot of rural areas within my district as well and that. And yeah, I tried to keep in touch somewhat, but keep from annoying them too much as well. It's just to relay the concerns across.
We've all had individual conversations with, you could hear around the table, Councillor Brent Sampson mentioned as well, conversations with individual, supervisors or employees of TIR, but it would be nice to get us all in a room together to hear a little bit more about the context that they work in, because they have lots of constraints that they're working within as well, and I'm sure budget is one of them as much as it is for us. So we're just looking forward to kind of opening that door a little bit wider.
While they're waiting for this meeting with transportation officials, District 2 Councillor and Deputy Warden Michael Digdon has a piece of advice for Richmond residents concerned about snowplowing, or more specifically, a phone number for them to call.
625-2540 is the number to call in the event that your road has not been plowed. And trust me, by calling your plow operator, by calling a supervisor, by calling anything else, the only way to advance the ticket or to show that your road has not been touched or you don't feel it was adequately plowed is to call that number.
And now let's take a look at an issue that Telile Community Television will be concentrating on over the next several days. It's about the Arichat Community Development Association and the group's plans to set up a new park near École Beauport. We heard recently from Rochelle Sampson, who made a presentation on the proposal at the Committee of the Whole meeting for Richmond Municipal Council in February. In a few moments, we're going to share that entire presentation with you. Keep an eye on Telile over the next little while, because Becky Bourinot sat down with Rochelle Sampson recently for an exclusive interview about the park project. And coming soon on our sister French interview show, Notre Côté, I'll be speaking with ACDA Representative Brandon Boudreau about the park project as well. But to begin, let's take a look at Rochelle Sampson's presentation to Richmond Council's Committee of the Whole about how the park project is proceeding and how the Arichat Community Development Association got going in the first place.
So the association was established in 1998 by some really wonderful community members who brought to fruition the Arichat Playground, which was previously located behind Gulliver's Tea Room. In June of 2020, there was some newly appointed officers and directors who joined the committee, and after a couple meetings, kind of decided that they wanted to bring together the Richmond County Recreation Park. They all had the common goal of wanting to increase the health and wellness of community members through outdoor recreation. So at these meetings, I think, we really established a round table of things that we want to bring to this community. So our goal is to have a park that aims to provide an inclusive experience for people of all ages and all abilities. Oftentimes, people with mobility issues or people on the autism spectrum have a separate experience from their peers, and this park really aims to remove that boundary altogether. So the Richmond County Recreation Park will house a 2-lane walking track, which will be specifically the size to have 2 wheelchairs or walkers side by side. An inclusive playground, which will not only be wheelchair accessible, but will encompass sensory play equipment for children on the autism spectrum. A fitness area with outdoor workout equipment. A skating rink, which can be drained in the summertime and used as a shinny rink. A splash pad, a beach volleyball court, which is currently existing, and then aside from that, which all of that will be enclosed within a fence, in a separate area there'll be a off-leash dog park, which will have a section for larger dogs and a section for smaller dogs. So the location, as you could kind of see where the skateboard park is just up the road from the municipality building. It's off to the left of the school, École Beauport. So it's kind of strategically located in the heart of the community. We feel it's a great area. It's a really great piece of land. It was a baseball field, so there's some drainage underneath, and the land itself is quite moldable, so you don't have to remove any big trees or make any big changes, and you have access to it currently, which is great. Location-wise, it is right next to a cobble-pour, so it's not involved with the school. It'll be a completely separate public space, but it's very convenient to have next to a school for the children. It is just up the road from St. Anne's Centre, which, with the new sidewalks, which I know everyone has really enjoyed with the mild winter we've had, they can just kind of either come on up, they can take a walk on up to the park, or they can drive up. It's not far. And it's also just down the road from the Hartsville Madame Disability Association home. That I think they could benefit from that as well. So our strategy, we understand that this is a very large project. There's quite a bit of things in there. So we've divided it into multiple phases that will accomplish over multiple years, depending on the source, how much funding we can source within a time frame. So depending on how much we can get, if we can get it all that we need, we can do it all at once, and if not, we can do it over multiple years. So we've budgeted for $600,000. This is based on we acquired quotes from multiple suppliers for multiple aspects of the project. And we came up with that number. That also includes a lot of volunteer time that we think we'll be able to put in there as well. So we're going to do some fundraising, local fundraising, Chase the Ace, silent auction, big sales, tournaments, and donations from individuals and businesses. There are quite a few provincial and federal grants at this time for recreation and sports, and especially I know COVID really pushed that, which I think is great. So we'll definitely be dipping into there. We've got quite a setup going for that. And we have a great community of people who are so able and so skilled and have access to quite a lot of things that I think will have a lot of volunteers on this project as well. So our partners, what we're looking to do, we understand that there's a lot of businesses and people, like I said, on this island who can't necessarily contribute financially, which we completely understand. But as I mentioned, there are a lot of skilled individuals on this island, and people have a lot more to give than just money. They have a lot of time, and they have, well, not a lot of time, but they have time and they have abilities and access to things that some people don't. So there is the Conseil de Développement Économique de la Nouvelle-Écosse that we are working with, CDENE. And they have provided us kind of with a groundwork on how to kind of get the project going. And Erin Ryan is the female we're working with there. And she's kind of giving us a concept of what funds are out there, what grants to source, and kind of how to put our project together, which is a great start to such a large project. We've been in contact with the CSAP to kind of talk to them about how we think they could contribute. We gave them ideas like they have like a charpenterie class where they can build stuff if they wanted to build a park bench, or they wanted to build bilingual signage, or monuments with the Acadian history. So projects of such sort I think would be really beneficial for those students because they could see it being used in the community. They also have classes like entrepreneur and co-op and stuff if the students were interested in helping us bring this project to life. I think that would be really cool for them to be able to see it in the real world. So the municipality of the County of Richmond, we understand, that there isn't always a budget for these things, but we know that you guys have a great staff with, great access to certain things, so we'd love to be able to come up with a way that we could work together to see that come to life. Just like local businesses and organizations, there's some people with big equipment, which we're going to need at some point, some heavy operating systems, and I think there's some people who would be really keen to try to help us get that done at a lower cost. And as well, community members, like I mentioned, some great volunteers and some people who can help us. I know a lot of the installation of equipment, if you can take that, a lot of suppliers will let you do that on your own with a certain amount of insurance. So I know we can gather some community members to get that done as well.
How did Richmond councillors react to Rochelle Sampson's proposal on behalf of the Arichat Community Development Association? Well, let's hear a few of those reactions, beginning with District 1 councillor Sean Sampson, whose constituency takes in eastern portions of Arichat, as well as Petit de Gras and the surrounding communities.
Thank you to you and your group for putting this project, or planning this project, more or less. I mean, a couple of weeks ago we had some presentations from Engage Nova Scotia when it comes to quality of life initiatives in this area, and the Strait area and Western Cape Breton was on the radar for people that are choosing places to live first before looking for jobs. So the fact that these areas are on their radar, and the fact that recreation parks like this project would attract more people to this area and give people the initiative to come here and also stay here with their young families. I think it's great, and whatever we can do as a council, we're glad to do it for you.
Now let's hear from District 3 Councillor Melanie Sampson, who has a comment and a question for Rochelle Sampson. Following Rochelle Sampson's response, you'll hear once more from District 1 Councillor Sean Sampson. Yes, we know there's a lot of Sampsons in there. Bear with us. Here's District 3 Councillor Sampson right now.
It's really wonderful to see a community group so interested in something. It's such a big project, and I think it will really benefit the community for sure. I'm curious about your phases. So you've talked about like multiple phases. You'd also talked about, that those phases would sort of roll out as funding is secured. So do you have a general plan in terms of, where would you start? Like what would be the first part that you'd be interested in pursuing?
The way that we kind of did it, we looked at the project from a standpoint of going outside in. So your first step is obviously to prep the land and kind of get that ready so that whatever piece you do decide to go with, it's capable. So the first thing we think is that's really needed in this community is a playground. There was one in Arichat, and it unfortunately just didn't work out, and the piece was quite small. So our first big pieces probably be the walking track and the playground. We think those reach the biggest, component, and I think that would, once people see that come to life, I think they would realize that, it's really going forward and the potential is really there. And then that still allows you to work in around it. The walking track, you would have to leave a space if you had to bring on big equipment just to come through, but we planned all that through with the fencing area, that there's still room. So
you would pretty much work your way from the outside in. So start with the walking track, and that's great, And also, you mentioned dog park. How many times I don't know about you, Mike, and you guys, but in this area, how many times, people saying we need a dog park in this area, right? So to have you mention a dog park is great as well,
Shortly after hearing about how Sampson and her group want to tackle the project in phases, Richmond Warden Amanda Mumbercat asked Sampson what the Development Association's plans are going forward and whether they could be looking at other community development projects for inspiration.
Have you thought about sort of like costing that up and like chunking that up into programs yet, or is that like a little bit a ways down the road yet for you?
We thought about that in the beginning. We weren't sure if we wanted to apply for pieces as we went, but we decided that we want to tackle it as a project, a large project, all of it at once and get as much out of it as we can. There's quite a bit of funding out there, which is really great. We have an entire spreadsheet full of grants and things you can go at. So we're kind of just tackling them one by one and gathering the things that we need. And unfortunately, that's the part that takes the most time, is all the quotes. And you have to get multiple suppliers, and it's a whole process. So, but the way that we really kind of thought about it is that if we're just going to keep doing it as it comes in, and because the more people you have in the ground at once, the more you can kind of do at the same time. So the only thing that we thought we're really going to hit a snag with is the splash pad because of the water. So that's kind of the one that's probably going to take the most time, and then that and the rink. But the rink you can usually flood if you really wanted to, if you bring up mass amounts of water and then deal with it that way. But the splash pad requires continuous amounts of water flowing. So that one is kind of towards the end, even though it would be something we would love to see first. It's just a bit of a trickier process. So that's kind of how we broke it down, but we're speaking to multiple people who have done similar projects that kind of are giving us, we did this or it didn't work for us. Hawkesbury is a great example of that, right? So they're really kind of, they've given us some great input on how to kind of tackle it the best way possible.
Now, just a reminder that this presentation from Rochelle Sampson took place at the February meeting of Richmond's Committee of the Whole. However, following the regular council meeting 2 weeks later, I asked Warden Mumbercat what she felt about the project and about the possibility of other communities taking on similar park development.
Oh, Rochelle did a great job with her presentation. I mean, she was professional, thorough. It's an exciting project. I mean, in my mind, anytime you see community groups like that willing to step up to enhance, essentially their own community center, it's hard to argue with that. I think they've got a great plan in place. She talked about an approach that made a lot of sense from an implementation perspective, and I'm excited to see where that goes for sure.
You get the sense that this could spark other communities to get similar projects going?
Oh, I hope so. But honestly, I think Richmond County can pat itself on the back. Our volunteers are pretty awesome at that kind of thing. When you look at, all the work that's gone on around the park in St. Peter's and the plans for, park in River Bourgeois, and there's a lot of communities that are paying attention to this. And I think it all harkens back to that conversation that we had with an Engage Nova Scotia regarding our quality of life and what's important to Nova Scotians and what's important to people here. So, yeah, it's great to see.
There are currently 4 sewer systems that are serving the residents that fall under the boundaries of the Richmond Water Utility. They're located in Arichat, Petit de Gras, Louisdale, and Evanston. At the latest regular monthly meeting of Richmond Municipal Council, councillors approved first reading of amendments to Sewer Bylaw 52, which would see customers in these 4 areas combined under a single Richmond sewer utility. It would be similar to the setup that we've seen in St. Peter's, Sampsonville, and the surrounding areas over the years. But not only will it involve combining the sewage infrastructure, it could also see some savings for customers based on real-time billing implementations that would come with the bylaw revisions. To help explain all of this, let's start with Richmond Warden Amanda Mumberket as she goes over the 4 main principles of the bylaw amendments that have come up at the recent Richmond Council regular meeting.
To change the method of billing for sewer services so that sewer billings are based on real-time water billings rather than calculated based on the prior year's water billings. To make provisions for metered sewer connections for institutional, commercial, or industrial customers with water consumption that varies significantly from sewage discharge volumes. To provide for a mechanism to adjust a sewer bill in certain circumstances where a customer's water consumption is unusually high due to a water leak or other unusual activity. To combine the 4 sewer systems into a single sewer system similar to Richmond Water Utility to allow for a single sewer ratio among all 4 sewer systems.
Working on moving the 4 sewer systems into a single unit. I think that will be, the benefits of that will be both short-term and long-term in terms of sort of normalizing the sewer rates across the county, but also planning for the future and capital expenditures, which are absolutely going to have to happen within the next number of years.
According to the warden, 3 of the 4 sewer systems slated to be combined in the new Richmond sewer utility are in dire need of repairs, particularly the 2 systems serving Isle Madame and the Louisdale system.
These systems have been created over a long period of time. Some infrastructure is newer than others. We look at the brand new installation, or fairly new anyways, in Evanston compared to other systems, and so it wasn't a surprise to us to see that they were still 4 separate systems, but moving together into one system will allow us to, I think in the future, like I said, there'll be some short-term benefit, but what I'm most excited about is the long-term benefit of planning for capital investment in all 4 of those sewer systems and being able to finance it accordingly, right?
At the same time, if the new sewer bylaw goes through, Warden Mumberket feels there could be savings in store for residents as a result of the new real-time sewer billing provisions.
It's a complicated issue. We were factoring in a lot of things, but that is definitely part of it. Our desire is to try to create billing systems that are as fair as possible for customers, but that are also predictable, right? So that they're less at risk of large fluctuations, which a lot of people on fixed incomes just can't afford, right? So a lot of people at many income levels, they're looking for that predictability.
Some of our regular viewers might remember that in December, the Strait Area Mutual Aid Association made a presentation to Richmond Council's Committee of the Whole meeting. At that presentation, members of the association talked about the importance of having new dry hydrants around the county so that the county's volunteer firefighters could use them in times of an emergency. At the time, there were only 2 dry hydrants that were available to Richmond County's volunteer firefighters. One of them is shared with a mutual aid association in Sydney. So, Richmond CAO Don Marchand commissioned the county's emergency services coordinator, Brett Hershey, to investigate how 24 other municipalities across the province have dealt with this issue. So here's CAO Marchand at the most recent regular Richmond Council meeting, explaining what Hershey found in his report, and then we'll hear from Richmond councillors and Warden Amanda Mumberket about how the county plans to go forward in dealing with this issue.
We managed to get 24 responses from counties across the province to indicate what their method of dealing with dry hydrants involved. And there were the majority of them were within the 2 options that provided that fire departments would do it themselves, or there was a hybrid model. So that meant that there were fire departments that would either request funding, or the county would provide funding for these dry hydrants and help out the fire departments to install these hydrants. And in the hybrid models, there was various levels of participation on the municipality's part. In a lot of cases, they would provide minimum funding and then hand over these dry hydrants to the fire departments with no further obligation regarding maintenance, short-term or long-term. And then some were a little bit more involved, and they would provide for a lot more funding and not take the minor maintenance, but any major maintenance they would partake in. So 50% of the fire department, 50% of the responses were solely fire department responsibility, and just about 50% was in a hybrid model, but of course with a lot of restrictions, and a lot had no further obligation.
I have no problem with the splitting the cost of the installation. I have a problem with the volunteers of the fire department installing. I think if we look at the CVRM, they're one of the counties that actually did the installation and I guess covered the cost. Again, some of our fire departments do have very good, I guess, resources or funding available, and I guess we can work with them to come to a solution of cost. But I believe it's on the county to make sure that they're all installed the same and adequately. And I feel that I disagree with Mr. Hershey's recommendation to have the fire departments be responsible for the installation.
Yeah, I think we've got some departments that are probably capable financially of getting that done, but we've got others that aren't. It's the way it is, and until we sort some of this out, I think I'd be open to, in budget deliberations, looking at possibility of a hybrid model, whereas maybe there's some kind of grants available, and maybe we could instruct Mr. Hershey to find out any and all options, possibly federally or provincially, that financial aid that might be there for the departments, because some of them, even if there was, let's say, financial aid from the province, they may not be able to come up with the rest regardless anyway, and maybe that's where we can fill in the gap.
For me, I would agree with Deputy Warden Digdon that it shouldn't fall on a volunteer fire department to be building these dry hydrants, and like Councillor Brent Sampson mentioned, some of them can afford to fund these dry hydrants, and some can't. So let's look at it at budget deliberations. But as far as looking, putting the responsibility on the fire department to build these things, no, I would agree with Councillor Digdon on that situation. Yeah, it shouldn't fall on the fire departments for sure.
District 3 Councillor Melanie Sampson was unavailable to attend the council meeting last week, but she did participate by phone. While Sampson applauded the research and recommendations provided by Emergency Services Coordinator Brent Hershey, she suggested that Council should look beyond Hershey's final recommendation.
I would agree with my fellow councillors that, probably some type of a hybrid method would be most suitable for us. Especially given that across the province, the statistics do support that that's a viable option. Our original motion, my original motion was that we were looking for a recommendation regarding the placement of hydrants in the county, including things such as responsibility, which was addressed here, but costing, regulations, design, geographic mapping, maintenance plans. I think that they were touched on in terms of his recommendation, but I do think that there is a bigger picture here, and just sort of including everything regarding regulations, easement, design. I suspect he was including those all in the idea of installation. So I certainly would, I would certainly welcome a wider conversation and through budget deliberations in regards to what type of a hybrid model we perhaps could look at to ensure that we have, good water sources to support our fire department.
I have to say, Mr. Hershey did a fantastic job of assembling an information package in a very short period of time, mind you, for municipal council to review. I think we weren't in full agreement with his recommendation by any means. It was interesting to hear the comments from around the table about, the nature of our fire departments being volunteer, the desire to help our volunteer firefighting organizations. So I think, I think the best course of action was the outcome of this evening's meeting, where we're considering this from not just it's not just about money, it's also about safety, but it's also about having good policy based around it. And so we'll be looking forward to that at our next committee meeting.
It just seems like we keep passing the buck, and it really does, from, I guess, fire department to council and council back to fire department. And it's time that, it's time that we engage as new council and, definitely sit down, whether it's with several fire chiefs or with the EMO or whatever we have to do to get the ball rolling.
Basically, what I heard was that they wanted to do more than what was in the recommendation. So what that will look like in the end, I mean, it's been referred to budget. We've got a lot of priorities to consider at the budget, right, at budget time. But it was they've made it part of the priority listing, and I think that's a very positive sign. I think when it comes to how we apply that budget, the detail will be in what comes out of that policy and bylaw committee, right? And so I don't know that it's more, but especially with reference to Councillor Melanie Sampson's request to look at what other municipalities are doing to see if there's some policy we could learn from out there now, because what we had was kind of a summary report, so maybe we could get some actual documentation. So I think there's a willingness to learn from what's going on elsewhere, but also a desire to right-size it for Richmond County.
And that wraps up this week's edition of Telile 24/7. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and a big thank you to my interview guest this week, Richard MacDonald of Praxes Medical Services. And a big thank you to Becky, Bourinot, Nick Boudreau, and Cora LeBlanc of Telile Community Television for their production work on the municipal council footage you saw from Richmond Council earlier in the episode. If you'd like to comment on anything you've seen over the past hour on the show, or you have some ideas or suggestions for future interviews or stories that we could cover, I'd love to hear from you. You can contact me directly. My phone number is 902-625-8863, and my email is adamjrcook, cook with an E, @gmail.com. Don't forget you can contact Telile Community Television directly. The station phone number is 902-226-1928. And you can email using the address info@telile.tv. Don't forget to follow Telile on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Our YouTube channel features every single episode of Telile 24/7, including this one, as well as interviews and stories from the show. And you can also see our sister French program, Notre Côté, on the YouTube channel, as well as several new interviews and programs and other special events that my Telile colleagues have been putting together in recent weeks. And if you'd like to hear what's going on our Telile airwaves, there's a great way to check that out. Try our new Telile 24/7 podcast. It's available at the URL soundcloud.com/Telile. That's it for this week, everybody. I'm Adam Cooke. Thank you once again for joining me. I'll look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks' time with a brand new edition of Telile 24/7. We'll see you then.